Sometimes I like to come to the cemetery and just to walk around. It's a fascinating place. I like to read the stone markers and the names and wonder about the stories beneath the rocks. Stories of life and death, of cancer, of old age, car accidents. And I wonder about my own death, about the day when I'll have a stone marker placed in the neat, perfect rows. We drive by this place all the time, and yet we rarely think about our own death. It's like this fenced-in secret that no one talks about, the elephant in the room. We used to call these graveyards, now we call them cemeteries, and we give them names like Forest Lawn or Mountain View, conjuring up this image of a mountain meadow filled with flowers, somewhere you go for a picnic, not a place for the dead. People used to die, and now they just pass away. We used to hold funerals, and then we started to call them memorials, and now a celebration of life. It's like we aren't able to put to words this event that keeps happening to people around us. The Victorians, they used to talk about death all the time. They were obsessed with death. And for them, the topic of sex was completely taboo. In our culture, it seems these are reversed. We're obsessed with sex. It's all we talk about. And for us, death has become this unspeakable. We won't even name it. And we hide the reality behind euphemisms. She passed away. He's no longer with us. He's gone on to a better place. As a pastor, I've performed many funerals, and I've been at the graveside where the scriptures having been read and prayers having been offered and flowers having been laid on that black casket as it readies to descend into the grave. This family, having said goodbye for the last time, breaks into song, singing praises to God for his goodness and grace, giving thanks to him. They share a memory and they laugh together, rejoicing even in the midst of their difficulty. And I've stood in that very same spot as another family, so utterly overwhelmed with hopeless despair that there's just this tangible heaviness that has fallen on the entire group. For them, this moment is utterly devastating. This is it. Death, our great enemy, has won victory. This is the end. There's nothing else. On 2 occasions, I've stood over the grave of an infant as the child's parents and grandparents gather to say goodbye to a life cut so tragically short. And I can never erase the memory of those horrible little black caskets. They just scream out, this is all wrong. We know that death is wrong. We know that this is not the way it's supposed to be. Death screams at us, something's broken. This is not good. In John chapter 11, Jesus' good friend Lazarus dies, and as he comes to the grave with Lazarus' 2 sisters, as he sees Mary weeping, and as he sees the tomb where his good friend's body has been laid, Jesus feels 2 things deeply inside him. First, there's this sorrow at the pain of his friends and at the loss of Lazarus. But mixed into that, there's also this intense anger that Jesus has. He's furious. He's greatly troubled, it says. Even though he's just about to raise Lazarus from the dead. The happy ending is just around the corner, yet Jesus is furious. Why? Death comes from sin. It's our rebellion against God, our severed relationship. That is why we all die. Jesus is furious because he's angry at how sin has ravaged God's good creation. Look at what sin has done. Sickness, pain, sorrow, disease, death. Death is not a friend to be welcomed. It's not a natural thing to be accepted. It's an enemy to be angry at. In the Gospel of Luke, much of his story is structured around Jesus' journey to Jerusalem. Jesus set his face toward Jerusalem, and this becomes the turning point in the whole story. But Luke makes it clear that Jesus' journey to Jerusalem is a journey to the cross. The 10-chapter journey to Jerusalem is a journey to his own death. But Jesus' willingness to go to his own betrayal and death is not defeat, but victory. His end should not be viewed as a tragic one, but as his greatest moment, his greatest triumph. Sometimes we wonder, why does God even allow pain and sorrow and death? And we can't know all the answers, we can't know God's thoughts, but we do know from the Bible that from before the foundation of the world, God had a plan to glorify his grace through saving many through the death of his Son. And so we know that God created a world with death so that Jesus could die for us. He created death to defeat death through the death of his Son in our place. Israel's ancient Canaanite neighbors believed in Mot, the god of death. And Mot was like this great mouth, a big swallower that swallowed everyone up. And with Mot hanging out in the background, God, through the prophet Isaiah, talks about the great last day. He says in Isaiah 25 that on that day, God will swallow up death forever, and he will wipe away the tears from every face. Death, the great swallower, will be swallowed up forever. And we'll say on that day, "This is our God, and we have waited for him that he might save us." Death is very real. It looms over all of us, whether we ignore it or whether we obsess over it. But for those who follow Christ, who identify with Christ, death is not the final word. As Jesus rose from the dead, we too will rise from death and experience new resurrection life. Death is swallowed up in victory. So for the Christian, a graveyard is much like a garden. Rows and rows of seeds carefully planted with markers indicating what's been planted where, waiting for the spring, waiting to sprout, waiting for new life. Oh death, where is your victory? Oh death, where is your sting?